take your beats over. Me, yeah. Oh, it gives you a bottom space, yeah. So imagine, like I said, with the covers. Yeah, yeah, covers all but the inside, you don't want to do all black on it, yeah. So we learned that. You see, I tell you, it's a good to have yourself for yourself. And I have so much positivity attached to this conversation. We've been learning. Look at that. Look at that. Surprise you sometimes. Oh, okay. You got it? Yeah. What you say? I said, I heard smoke.
Let's not start this event with a fight now. Right. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your patience. And I'm not even going to take up none of your time. Without further ado, our featured guest right here for this Saturday afternoon. Round of applause.
All right. So thank you. And I feel odd talking to the mic. We gonna. Do you need for the mic for the? Okay, so yeah, she back to say yeah. So we good. Okay, so we'll make it right. All right. So first, let me just say thank you for coming out, and I really appreciate you taking the time. Friends and colleagues alike. So again, thank you. So for those, my name is Lathardus Goggins II. I am a scholar and educator. Been doing this, good grief, 30 some odd years professionally as an educator, and I've been involved in rites of passage, unbeknownst to me, all my life, and formally, probably since '94, as well, I was formally introduced into the rites of passage community, and through a training from the brothers from out of Gary, Indiana, called Mecca, under Dr. Anthony Mintz's model. And most of us, frankly, have been trained or introduced through Dr. Mintz's model under the Akan traditions coming out of Ghana, West Africa. So, so we have that commonality. So I'm gonna. So I'm trying to set this up in terms of my conversation, and I really want it to be a conversation, not me just on the stage here talking about my rights journey, how it led to this, and in particular, my emphasis on a family-based, community-linked rites of passage, and so let me start there. So again, I was formally introduced to rites of passage through a group called the Kibalan Shura out of Akron, Ohio. It was a group of activists, people concerned about young people, youth. We were all working in the community, doing different things, mentoring different programs. There were a few of us who were actively involved in particularly education, and trying to bring education opportunities and address educational achievement, teacher expectations, those kinds of things, right? And so there was, to give honor to one of my ancestors, Ken McClintock. He was the director of West Akron Neighborhood Development Wand. And he, and again, other, Fred Johnson, Terry Shelton, John Fuller, Baba DC, Mama Isi, Sonia Bryant, and there's others. I probably shouldn't start naming names. So it was like getting into it, but we were all again in the working with young people and addressing challenging agricultural schools with their perceptions about Black history and Black folk and that kind of stuff, right? And I just don't remember how specifically it came out, but we started hearing about this idea of rites of passage. Ken McClinic reached out to these brothers, brought them in, and we did a marathon workshop, Friday night through Sunday night. We were there and go through this stuff and learning these concepts. And after doing that, I had the language and the concepts to reflect back on my life and look at, this is the stuff my parents have been doing. This is the stuff that my family had been doing. And so when I talk about my rites of passage journey, I often say I have to start in the middle to get to the beginning. Because it was my exposure to that workshop, that training, that I had, again, the language to begin to think back, oh, this is why. This is what's going on. And even when my parents weren't calling it rites of passage, they didn't, and if I were to ask them, I did ask them, they would not have said, oh, we're providing the rites of passage. But at 9 years old, I'm going across the continent of Africa for my 9th birthday. Okay. We started off in Senegal. I'm at Goree Island, looking at the door no return. I go from Goree Island to Lagos, Nigeria. And one of the first times I was challenged with this idea, because I'm looking at this brother in traditional African dress. I'm looking at this other brother in a Western business suit. And, my 8-year-old self, I hadn't turned 9 yet, and I had assumed that the guy in the suit must be in charge. And the guy was like, no. The other guy, he's actually his boss. But then he also told me, if you come here tomorrow, it might be flipped. The guy who's in African dress might be in a business suit. The guy who's in business suit might be in African dress. So it really challenged. That was one of the first times I got challenged with my idea of what I thought was, European aesthetics and what goes with that. We go to Dakar, Senegal. In Dakar, looking at the city hall. It is shaped like a spaceship. Right? It's this funky building with these curved buildings around it. Again, I'm thinking something, looking at this like, this is, So we go to Senegal, we go to Benin, we go to Ivory Coast, we go to Kenya, Tanzania, we go to Obuai Gorge, and at the time, the oldest indications, oldest evidence of humans were these footprints going through the gorge. I turned and asked my mother, if the oldest human beings are here, why every time I look at Adam and Eve, they're white? Right? My mother remembers this question I asked her. Now, actually, on my birthday, we go to Longwood Crater. I wanted to see, being the Leo that I am, I wanted to see a family of lions. The guy was like, it's August, this ain't really that time of the year for that. But before we left the crater, see a pride of lions. male, female cubs. But then I'm thinking, I'm looking around, this ain't the jungle. No, I'm kidding. I'm 9 years old now, right? And I'm thinking, you know, lions are supposed to be the king of the jungle. So this whole experience is challenging these perceptions, challenging these things that we often say in this country as if they're just normal, they're factual. And I'm having all these experiences that's challenging me. We go from Kenya, Tanzania, we go into Ethiopia. We go the very source of the Nile. We're there, the beginning of the Nile. And this, I began to understand. So the Nile doesn't flow down. Well, it flows down, but my perception of down in this country is north to south, right? That's how rivers flow typically here. Down means from south to north. Okay. Now that little piece of nugget makes sense to me almost 10 years later, sitting in a college class. But I do get the sense that the Nile, the beginning of the Nile, is in the heart of Africa. We go up into this mountain and we go to the oldest continuous Christian congregation in the world. All right, this church has had a congregation in it at that point for roughly 1,900 and some odd years. Come to find out, monks from this church goes north to convert barbarians to Christians. Come out of this church in Ethiopia. Again, I asked my mother, why is it that when we talk about Christianity, and I'm looking stuff on the walls, all these white people, and it's in Ethiopia, right? And then of course, my 9-year-old self, there's a McDonald's in Addis Ababa. I gotta take a picture of that. Right? So when I get back, sitting in Mrs. Snyder class, world geography, 5th grade? No, fourth grade. And she's talking about Africa, the villages, and how underdeveloped, well, she said underdeveloped, but she was like, dirt roads and villages and huts. And I'm like, there's cities there. Well, not like modern cities like we have. I'm like, yeah, got some modern cities there. Some really cool stuff there. Well, no. And then my classmates are telling me, she's the teacher. I'm like, tomorrow I'm bringing in pictures. And so I'm bringing these pictures. This is Lagos. That's the skyline. Oh, look at this building. It looks like a spaceship. That's in Dakar. And the thing that convinced them was, here's a McDonald's. You can't be backward and have a McDonald's, right? And from that moment on, I knew they lied to me. It challenged my whole education, frankly, in so many ways, and that's another discussion there. Because once I knew it, I felt no need to prove it to any of my teachers. So I was just done, which had its own set of issues. Fast forward, I'm sitting in a college course listening about Egypt and how they're busy trying to take Egypt out of Africa. All these Greek influences and the air, this kind of stuff. But he says something like, but it was the upper kingdom that conquered the lower kingdom and was the formations of the dynasties and so on and so on. Okay. I'm like, but if it's the upper kingdom, why do you call it the upper kingdom? Well, it's because it's at the beginning of the Nile and Oh, okay. So that's in Africa. That's deep in Africa. No, upper, we're busy talking about up north by the Delta. I'm like, no. Upper Kingdom is at the beginning down here. You're down by Ethiopia because the Nile flows from the upper down to the lower. And in this part of the world, upper means down here by Ethiopia, flowing to the north down to the Mediterranean. These people, and the professor's looking at me like, I'm like, because I was there. I was there. I right? And so again, I'm being challenged, right? So that was that. Now the other thing I tell about how my parents provided this rites of passage for me, I'll share. I was born in Louisiana. My mother, father, academics, met at Grambling, but then they moved to Queens, New York, then to Akron. So I was always away from Grambling, but we always went home, right? My mother always called home, 7:30 a.m. Saturday morning. Get on the phone. Hey, Grandma. Hey, Grandma. Grandpa. How you doing? All right. Right. Now, our time. That's 6:30 their time. So generally, by the time you get to about 7, Grandma's already made breakfast. It's time for devotional. So not only am I on the phone, we're going to participate in this devotion. Everybody says a prayer. And, they'll be kind of thing, right? So generally, we call, talking, hear Grandma in the background, or Grandma's talking, and you hear some clanking. Come on, y'all. And somewhere before the time we get off the phone, you start to say this verse, right? Now, that's from 5 years old to when I was almost 19. Every Saturday morning. If we weren't in Louisiana, that was the thing. Once I have rites of passage and think about, because one thing I tell people, rites of passage doesn't guarantee that you won't mess up. What it does do, though, is let you know you're messing up. Right? And so, as I had a chance to sit down and think through this, I was like, wow. I'm thinking, what was some of the things that got me through? I challenged. I challenged the system. I swore up and down I would never go into education. Swore up and down I would never get my doctorate. So my mother got her doctorate same year that I graduated from high school. I'm like, I laughed at her. You did all that to get the R period in front of your name. I would never do that. Right? All that. So I'm processing what it is. And then one of the things that dawned on me was, no matter what I did Friday night, I had to be straight enough to call, to be on the phone with Grandma and Grandpa at 7:30 in the morning and say this Bible verse. Whatever I did Friday night, be on the phone Saturday morning at 7:30. Now, if I was to ask my mother, did you plan that? Were you thinking about what that meant for me? Whatever, the calculations I got to get in my head, so that okay, I may do a little something, but I can't go that far because Saturday morning. She'd probably tell you, no, I wasn't thinking of it wasn't that deep. But what that ritual did for me was provide me a standard by which I knew whatever I was doing Friday, I had to talk to grandma and grandpa Saturday morning. And that in reflection has saved me a million times. Right? So, all that to say, my commitment, my work, my advocacy to rites of passage is this family-based, community-led, African-centered process. Right? There's some good brothers out here doing community-based work, right? I know y'all doing some good community-based work, and that's important. I'm all this. But I also know is that when families adopted, right, in many ways, even the strength of the strength of the community-based stuff, the strength of it. I know y'all know. When y'all working with a group of young people, they got some good home training, and this ain't the first time that they're dealing with some of this. You can get into the deeper and more meatier stuff when, right? So, I guess for me, again, that's where I find my lane. That's the area that I find, and so the work that I do is around this notion of understanding the rites of passage process and model. What I hope my contribution has done is to help people who are interested in doing rites, implementing rites in their own families. Hopefully it has strengthened those who are interested in doing community-based rites, so that what are those components? What are those necessary understandings that make the experience significant? That is my hope of what I have, my contribution, frankly. And so with that, so my I guess my first book, African Rites of Passage in Education, came out in 96. And it was my master's thesis. After I swore up and down I would never go into education. The thing that my grandfather, I tell this story. My grandfather, because I was busy after I had some of these things going through my head right now. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, right? That's a whole other discussion too, because real quick, my father, who has 3 PhDs, had 3 PhDs this past now. My mother, I told you, graduated from, when I graduated from high school, she got her PhD. I go to college and flunk out the first semester. The first semester. My father, who's a full professor at the university, like, don't y'all normally do probation? And they told him, have you seen your son's grades? Right? Now, with that said, graduated from high school, I took AP chemistry, AP physics, AP math. I never again, in my mind, go back to the 5th grade, once I knew they were, 4th grade, once I knew they were lying to me, once I knew that I knew how to do it, I was done. You feel like doing homework? I ain't doing homework. Then, Father, I had no need to impress the teacher at that point. I knew it. I sit down, take a test. I do well on the test. I'm good. But I didn't have to. I never learned to study. Right? In high school, teacher says this. I say what the teacher says. I get an A. Right? Can't do that in college. So even though I had AP chemistry, AP physics, AP math, I get to college not knowing how to study. First semester, my father talks him into probation. Second semester, I did a little bit better. Now the only class I passed was my calculus class. I passed calculus 1, I passed calculus 2. Everything else was no. Okay. All right. So I had to go to the Air Force. I went to the Air Force. Learn how to study. All right. So all that to say, when I'm graduating from college, I want to be a fighter pilot. That fall semester, after going through and talking to the recruiter and all that kind of stuff, Berlin Wall comes down, and they cut back everything. So I have no plan. So I'm struggling. I'm trying to convince, going to Goodyear, Goodrich. They're looking at my resume, seeing how I volunteer with the kids. What you want to do is teach. Like, nah, you don't. I don't. No. I'm not going into education. All right. Long story short, talking to my grandfather. We go home. He's out in the back, and jump out the car, take off my shoes, get my feet in Louisiana dirt. Went out to see my grandpa, and not hi, how you doing? None of that stuff. He looks at me like, you know what the hell is? Like, what? Like hell would be getting up every day, doing something that you don't want to do, and going somewhere you don't want to go. That would be hell to me. How he didn't know that I had been turning down this opportunity to volunteer, all the stuff I would forego sleep to go volunteer with these kids. And this woman was offering me a position to do what I would do for free. I kept on turning her down. I'm not going into education. I'm not working with kids. That's not a real job. Talked to my grandfather. After that, I took the position. All that to say, then I go take a. At that point, I was busy trying to do NBA stuff. Gulf War breaks out. I get pulled out the program. Got to go to Panama to replace Howard base. Come back. My father says, "Why don't you take this philosophy of education course? This kind of gets you situated." And I sat there with Dr. Appletree, and first time I sat in a circle in a classroom, he's asking these questions about the meaning of education and stuff, and I'm in love. I'm like, wow, this is what I'm doing. Shortly after that, introduced the rites of passage. Kent has a cultural foundations of education class, master's. I'm in that. I'm looking for, because I'm processing what rites of passage is, its impact on education, all this other kind of stuff. And at the time, I could not find anything that connected rites of passage to education. Everything was rites of passage, anthropology, and human development. But, okay, but isn't that education? I could find nothing in the scholarship that connected rites of passage to education. So I wrote it. Okay. And then 25 years later, having been exposed to social emotional learning and some of the other stuff that's these buzzwords that's out here now, I did an update. My second book, Bringing the Light into a New Day. So again, that was my master's thesis. But if I was doing this, being smart, this would have been the first book I ever wrote. Talking about rites of passage, understanding the concept of rites of passage in those kinds of things. So in it, I talk about the purpose and function of rites of passage. Purpose and function, and in a large part, what this book is dealing with that purpose and function of rites of passage. The purpose and function of rites of passage is human development. The purpose and function of education is human development. If the function and purpose is human development, then what is it that it means to be human? What is it then when we talk about human development and at its core, what do we need as human beings? And this is one of the things we talk about in terms of rites of passage is the universal process of human development. I don't care what time, culture, geography, rites of passage. Joseph Campbell talks about the hero of 1,000 faces. It's the same story, the hero's journey, over and over again. Name any of your favorite movies, and it's going to follow this rites of passage process. If rites of passage is the universal process for human development, then shouldn't any activity concerning human development follow, utilize the rites of passage process? What I also know is that any time that a group of people try to oppress another group of people, right? So they're not going for genocide. We're not going to just wipe them out. We want to oppress them. We want to utilize them. We want them to serve our purpose. They always attack the rites of passage process. Always. So you get the Indian schools, send the Indian children east. You get rabbits without fences, the Aborigines, and how they try to cultural side them. Same thing in Canada. They recently had to do reparations there. But they've always attacked, right? And with us, it was don't speak your language, don't practice your culture, and those kinds of things, right? And so, and one of the things that they try to convince us even today is that our Africanness is one, that we lost it, which actually when you start looking at us, not really, right? And it's not worth finding out about. And so, all that to say, the purpose and function of rites of passage is this human development. Authentic identity rooted in the truth of your ancestors' experience. And the primary tool of oppression is to disconnect us from that heritage, to convince us not to practice it, to convince us it's not even worth looking for, right? The second part I'll talk about is the understanding the process and structure of rites of passage. There is this process. And if you talk about out of anthropology, they tend to talk about there's a 3-stage process. I advocate and I talk about it as a 4-stage process. Because the part of what as the anthropologist was coming in as the outside other, looking at what was the change, it was, okay, the boys were going off into the bush, right? Or the girls were taken away. Something happened and they brought back. So they saw the 3 stages. But there's actually 4 stages. Because the first stage is preparation. And it wasn't that the boys became, at 13, they were just taken away. Up until that point, they had been prepared. Up until that point, there was this understanding. Even for the most part, when we talk about one of the most known rites of passages is the Jewish bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. A child born on a particular day, that means that this part of the Torah is being read. The expectation then 13 years from now is that they'll read that part of the Torah. What happens between birth and 13 years? They go to school. They learn how to read Hebrew. They learn how to perform the rituals. So then on the 13th, they're taken away, they're due to perform, they pass the test, and then they're reincorporated, right? But if you're the outside person looking at it, you just see the taking away. So that's why anthropology tends to talk about it at 3, but as a person concerned with human development, I recognize the 4. Okay. So first, preparation. Preparation where you learn what it is to be a member, where you get a chance to practice it. This is the time where you, yes, make the mistake, but under the guidance, under the watch of a guide, of a concerned loved one, but the safety to make the mistake, to learn, and to develop the skill. And then when you're ready, the test. Approval from the elders. The chance where you have to prove yourself that you can actually do this thing. Right? Then once you've passed the test, there's the marking of the ceremony, the transition. This often is accompanied with certain symbols and various indicators of the transition. But there's a moment of in between, betwixt, as they say, that you enter in, not yet, and you exit as being completed. And then the reincorporation. Now that you've learned, you've been tested, you transitioned, now you're accountable. But also, now you get the privilege, right? So many times, too many times, people talk about that accountability and that burden that comes with responsibility, right? But there's privilege too. This it should be, right? And so that process, but that process takes place, that process is universal, but it is culturally specific. That the symbols, the values, and those kinds of things make sense in its cultural context. In, I think the example I said, the Maasai and the Hebrew, they both do rites of passage, but Hebrew symbolism doesn't work for a Maasai warrior, right? Now also that means the Sankofa of it. That we have to understand what is the essence of the lessons being learned, essence of the symbolisms that we're using. That we should, each generation, reflect, learn, does it make sense now? If I'm a Maasai warrior going off in my group going off to kill a lion makes sense if I value cattle on a savanna, right? That makes sense. But in 2024, maybe we need to look at what's the symbolic lion. What is the valued thing? May not be the cow, might not be the cattle, but it might be something else. Or if I'm no longer on a savanna, I'm in an urban environment, I'm facing a different type of lion. But I still have something of value that I need to protect. So maybe it's not that I take a bunch of urban boys and we go out to the savannah and go kill a lion, but maybe it's I take these urban boys and figure out what's the thing that you got to protect yourself from. And how do you go face that? What is it that you value and you hold dear? And what's the skills you need to protect that? Right? That's the same Sankofa. But also the context of which, right? We often say it takes a village to raise a child, but what's a village? The creator, the ancestors, the elders, the nation builders, the young people, the unborn. Who are those folks to you, to your family, to your group? Identify those things, right? That becomes that part of understanding the context, the model, and I talk about the notion of sacred knowledge, right? That by the mere possession of this knowledge is transformative, right? So what is that? And then, then I talk about some of the transformative power of rites of passage. I gave some examples of some things that have happened in my life and some things I'm doing with other folks. And in the book with a challenge and some examples of constructing a rite of passage. Since then, I've been struggling with what to do, and folks have been asking about, hey, Doc, why don't you do a program? I'm like, no, that just wasn't my lane. And again, frankly, I did. I saw too many people who were willing to pimp the system, frankly. Come in for a weekend, put a dashiki on, give you an African name, hit a couple of drums, boom, you did rites of passage, give me my check, thank you very much. And it just wasn't that, right? And I know some brothers and sisters that are doing some great programs. Hey, go talk to them. You don't need me to do another thing, right? This brother here is doing some good stuff. Look at this stuff. Dare to be king. Look at what he's doing. Look at this sister over here. Sister in Cleveland, Golden Cycles. They're doing some great work, right? Look at that stuff. I studied, and so I spent my time was going and looking at different people and looking at some of the stuff they was doing. Kent State has the Academic Stars program. They incorporated rites of passage. Actually, I'm doing a dissertation on that, and it was profound and significant. Lane College, they do rites of passage, some great stuff, right? But still, I was thinking, okay, and I worked out an outline. Then I was like, okay, I could do a series of books. Maybe I would do, ahead of my mind, I'm going to do it off of Nagusa Saba. So I'll do a workbook off of Umoja, I do a workbook on Chukwukalia. Then I was like, it just never quite came together. Then I was like, okay, I can do just one big workbook and have these different chapters. And I'll just have lesson plans in each of them. And I wrote that outline, and it just, then somewhere around the pandemic, the 2020, 21, I started seeing these cards, and you saw those cards, the black card, and then there's other one that has all the first letters of this long kind of thing that a black mother might say, and you're supposed to guess it, you know, that kind of stuff, right? And then there was this young sister at church. She came out with a deck of cards as different devotional, and I'm like, I can do cards. That makes sense. I can do that. And so I took my lesson plans and all those kinds of things, and created a deck of cards that had the lessons on them, the discussion cards. 7 lessons under each of the Google's office. So there's 49 lessons altogether. And I did it like that. So that's what Facing the Rising Sun is. Did 49 lessons under the Google's office. This is just what it is, but and this was after I came out with that. I did this. So, but in the rites of passage stuff, it's kind of sort of mixed, but it's a quote, a lesson, not a lesson, but a quote, a saying, you know, one for each of the year. So with these out, last year, my youngest son, he's 15 now. He will be 16. So what has become a family tradition is the first steps. So my oldest son did that first, and it was first steps into manhood. And so his 13th year, so starting at on his 12th birthday, the day after, I said, okay, we're gonna spend some extra time going over some stuff and just doing some stuff. And whenever I had, you know, man stuff to do, right? Go fix this, son. You come along with me. Come on, I'm gonna spend some extra time making sure you know how to do this. And around that same time, Hugh Harper came out with Letters of the Young Brother. And that was just a real good, I'm like, that's just real good topic discussion. I said, son, read this one, let's talk about it. What it means to you, right? And sat down, we talked about some other different things, the family stuff. Put a pin here. Again, my family, and again, this is a part of, I know it's unique and I'm appreciative, and again, why I'm on the family-based community. My family, we have land that we've had in our family since 1865. Frank and Judy Osborne goes across the South, ends up in Louisiana, gets a whole bunch of land for which there's Frank and Judy, Emmanuel and Emmeline, Amos and Sophronia, Moses and Evangeline, my mother Ellen, and me. Right? Each one of them, Amos had 10, Emmanuel had 9, Amos had 9, Moses had 7, my mother had 1. And we kept this land. The family kept this land. St. Rest Publications, St. Rest, Louisiana. I go to St. Rest, everybody there, my cousin. Right? So my children, every 2-3 years, we get back down to Louisiana, we go home to Grambling, we go down home to St. Rest, and we go walk this land. We go look at these grave sites. We don't know where Frank is buried, but we do know where Emmanuel is buried, right here. Amos is buried in Sophronia, right over there. Moses, Evangelist, right over here. And Grandma says she wants to be right here. Right? We go walk this land. So we create this tradition, first steps. When my son go through Hill Harper's book, we go through family history, ask him some questions about what is it that when you think about a man, what you think about? Write it down. Let's talk about it. Right? We're going to be deliberate about this definition of manhood. And then on his 13th birthday, if he's ready, we have the ceremony in which he then asks for my son at the time, my father and mother, my mother still living, my father was passed, but my father and mother, his great-grandmother on his mother's side, asked them for, after he provides a definition of manhood, he talks about what he learns and what his intentions are over the next 1, 3, and 5 years. He asks permission to take his first steps into manhood. I put a stole on him. He gets investment money. You can only invest it, you can't spend it, you can't take it out until you're 18. For these next 5 years, but this is what you do. And that has become a tradition. So when my daughter turned 12, she looked at me like, Dad, Trey got one. Yes, ma'am, let's go. And by that time, thankfully, Hill Harper came out with Little Young Sister. So here you go, baby girl. Read that first one. Let's talk about it. We talk to her mom. Hey, make sure she talk some of that woman stuff about what she needs to know. I'm going to talk to her about, from a man's perspective, hey, here's some things. Spend some time. What you want to learn? She wanted to learn some recipes from Grandma. Okay, she did that. 13th birthday comes around. She asks permission, and by that time, my father had passed. So Grandma and Grandma Jones, she asked permission to take her first steps. We have a ceremony. Folks come over to the house. She gets her money to invest. Right. My middle son, Richard, 13 come around. Now Richard's a little bit different. Sometimes being the baby boy of that group, he doesn't quite take some things kind of as serious as others, and he saw what happened with the other two. He just kind of thought, I get around to my 13th, this is how it's gonna pop off. And I was like, son, you're not ready. Right? And that summer I had a opportunity to take him to Ghana. And that was right. So at this point, all my children have been to Africa except for my youngest. We got to get him there. But this would have been his second trip now to Africa with my Richard. And coming back, he was like, okay, Dad, Yeah. So Thanksgiving, he has his son. He gets his money. And we have family. So my youngest, Demetrius, all my boys, oddly enough, but it works out. All my boys are 7 years apart. Trey, 7 years older than Richard. Richard, 7 years older than Demetrius. So as Demetrius is coming up, his older three come up and be like, Dad, we gotta get ready. Demetrius is talking to his older siblings about what I need to know, how I need to do this. Right? So it's become this tradition. My oldest is talking about when he has children, this is how we're gonna do this thing, right? So all of that to say, after my last child goes through, I really start thinking about, okay, put this together. And so over the last year, I put this together, and it just came out a couple weeks ago. And it is, again, I'm very deliberate about not doing, I'm not trying to say, here's a program, just do this, this, and this, and this, rites of passage. But it is, here's some things to ask, here's some questions to consider, here's some different perspectives to know. And I ask folks to do some work in reflection and understanding, because even with as parents particularly, our children are not ours to make of them what we will. Right? We are burdened to know what is the Creator's intent for their lives. And the rites is supposed to be preparation for the intent that is in their life. Right? So we have to know as guides who they are so that we can meet the burden, meet the challenge of providing them what they need for who they are. Right? So there's questions around that. And then I give an outline of some suggestions month to month, some things to do based upon what I have done that you may want to consider as a part of constructing a rites. And I have some resources. I'm still building some resources online to support the work, and that's that. So those are the books. That's the work that I've been doing. I appreciate your indulgence in allowing me to share. I guess this is the time I can say, hey, if there's some questions or comments or ways in which you talk about ways that you've connected and done some rights work yourselves. Yes.
You said you served in the Air Force?
Yes, sir.
What years were you in?
I was in from 85 to 91. I was a crew chief on the C-130 Hercules.
Awesome. I've been in since '86.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So I'm still working the system, if you will.
I hear you.
And I was impressed by what you had to say, and I was very impressed by your educational background based on your parents. And I wanted to see if we can get a chance to talk together privately.
You sure after this?
Okay.
Go rub it out.
All right.
All right. All right. So yes.
First, I just want to say thank you, for that presentation. I've been reading your work for quite some time.
Thank you, sir.
I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. We constructed a rites of passage in Wilmington. We used to have a rites. We went defunct. We went to the elders. We were part of our advisory board, and we restarted it with a younger group. What I would ask you is, would you consider writing an anthology so that we could trace the history of rites of passage in the United States? I think that's something that I haven't seen, and I asked a lot of questions. I I worked with Paul Hill for 2 years to develop my
Yeah,
curriculum.
yeah.
But that's something I'm interested in is, we need an anthology and a history of rites of passage.
I'm going to do this because he's sitting here, and he's a brother. He's a brother. Yeah. So if he gets with me, we all get it. Yeah. There's that whole piece, right? So if you know Paul Hill, right? So it's so many ways. Many of us, right? We have this our lineage through Anthony Mensa, right? And then shortly thereafter, Paul Hill, Hannibal Afrique, David Quam Whitaker, Baba Kelsey. There's some stalwarts, right? The sister here, good grief. Yes. And so there's these, right? And do you know about Enropuck?
Yes.
Way back in the day?
That's my lineage.
Okay.
That's my lineage.
Right. So many of us, right? And give me in trouble. I'm just like, that one of the things with, let's say, Keebler Sherrod, the challenge, let's say it like that, was we got introduced to rights, and we all kind of did our own separate thing, right? And in many cases, solid, good, but not collective. And the more we did it, the kind of more fractured and siloed we became, right? So much so, looking at the thing. So my elders, and back to back, I'm an elder now, which I'm still tripping on. But forgive me, it's better to ask permission than to ask for forgiveness than to ask permission. So, but I'm going to say this because it is important, I think. Probably about, this is 2024, so about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago, there was a group of nation builders, young people in their mid-30s that were coming up in Akron, and they got a hold of the rites of passage thing, and they go to Cleveland and they are studying, and they learn about the Keebler Sherrod, and they were like, well, if y'all got this thing going, what happened? Coming to the elders. Shouldn't y'all be? And they challenged us, right? And we had to deal with some of that stuff. Some of it still not quite resolved, right? But in the process of doing that, we also understood that while rites of passage provides an antidote to a hostile, toxic environment, and in many cases, the community programs particularly were equipping young people to be warriors in this hostile environment. Would it be better, particularly as elders, if we created a nurturing village that you could exist in, and yes, if you gotta go out there and fight, but have a place where you come home to. right? And ideally, find a partner. Ideally, build and have some sustainability amongst ourselves, right? And so, y'all know, what Black folk need to do is come together. What we need to do is, we need to unify. Okay, no, what's stopping us? Declare it and be so. We say it takes a village. Let's be a village. And at the end of the day, the only thing that's stopping us from being a village is us not being a village. If we say that, hey, we all family here, that's just about us declaring it and making this up. The formalities of it are not as significant as the agreement to do it, right? So with that said, the elders of Akron came together and developed a village framework to say that we're going to operate. Here's when we say village. What do we mean by that, right? There's certain values and systems that need to be in place in terms of health, spirituality, economic sustainability, education and youth development, cultural expression, right? We're not creating yet another organization. There's people out here doing this work already. It's just how we're going to see, recognize, and support it in this framework and try to and acknowledge its existence through this framework. In which then, as you are out here doing your work, it has a context for it. It's supported, seen, and understood to be a part of us, right? Hopefully that also means that support and that protection and that nurturing you feel as well. And as I do work, I know that it's connected to your work. So as I get resources, I'm more inclined to come talk to you and say, okay, I'm doing this thing over here. How's this thing? How can you work? How does this fit into what you're doing? As you're doing work, right, we're thinking about us as a system, right? So that's what we've been doing. That's what we've been doing. So I know you talked about anthology because that's where my mind went. I'm sorry. Yeah. But so all that to say, because of that, because we need to do better with seeing ourselves as a system, so much of why there needs to be this anthology is because so much has been splintered off, right? So I'm sorry, I know you said anthology, but that just, it hit me there.
Yeah, all I hear, I mean, I wasn't around, but Hannibal at Creek, I hear about him constantly.
Uh-huh.
But when I look online, I don't see enough information.
Mm-hmm.
And that, we don't know our history
Mm-hmm.
and our immediate history. So I started going back and finding out who was involved and worked in my city.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just trying to create the document so that we have that as a living legacy.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And I was just, just thinking like, man, I want to know more about what happened. And that information is just not available. And for me as a researcher, like I'm a geek when it comes to this information, and I want to know the lineage. I want to know who started, who did what,
Mm-hmm.
who came up with this idea and that idea. I think it's important.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, we gonna
Yeah, that's my thing.
okay, good. So
You got me. That's an everything to you, right?
all right. So Yeah, but yeah. I know some elders who this summer she was like, somebody need to come over here to my garage and get all this stuff.
Yes.
And because she's deep in it. It just needs to be digitized. It needs to go be indexed. But she got all that. Yeah. So let's talk. Let's make that up. Let's make that a thing. Yeah. Anybody else? Comments? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Dr. Goggins. I found this very interesting. But what I wanted to understand is, because I wanted to bring it back to the family.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say that the rites of passage is a necessary home education that anyone should really get before or by 18?
Most definitely. Yes. Right. So as a parent, right, if I want my son to be a man,
Right.
I don't wait until he's 18. I'll wait until he's 16. Right. A part of him being a man at 18 starts when he's 1.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yes.
It's about, and here's also the thing too. It is how you model it. More than anything, children learn from what they see. Right? With AI and all the technology, one thing that we have to be very, very intentional is being human. Right? With technology, it is easier and easier to lose our humanity. It is easier and easier for technology to move from being a tool to being a bondage, right? A crutch. Where if we are intentional with our humanity, we can use technology to elevate, to step up, to connect, to be more creative, a number of things. But if we abdicate our humanity to technology, we'll become captive. Right? So one of the things, some of us will with our rose-colored glasses, back in the day, we were a community, and if I got in trouble at school, the teacher would call, and Miss Johnson on the way home would say something to me, and all this other kind of stuff, right? But a part of that was y'all was gonna be community because y'all want to live no place else. We redlined y'all, so all y'all gonna be right here, right? Now with freedom,
you've seen communities of people, especially pockets, where they want people in a large mass.
So,
Thank you.
No, I was, if I may, that work is being done. It just needs to be amplified.
Oh, so.
When you look at some of the work that Paul Hill and them were doing in Cleveland, they were doing rites of passage-based work in prisons, right?
Yeah,
Still are,
yeah,
you know, they
yeah.
just did a documentary. And then we were doing some rites of passage-based work in the prison system in Baltimore, but on a community level, two things need to happen. One, we need to amplify it. The second thing is we need to be able to fund our own freedom. Because I know when you start talking about raising money, a lot of times people get real nervous.
Especially ones that got it.
Right, but we also got to be able to raise the money to build the capacity to do the work, which is also a challenge. But I would submit that the brothers on the corner are ready. We just not ready. They ready. They ready. We not ready. So,
I'm in college. I'm in grad school out of Baltimore. I get to work with
okay.
Eddie Conway's wife
Oh, I know
every day, and I'm from Southeast DC.
Okay.
And my dad's from Compton, so I get to see the things that are a reality, not just turning in small behind closed doors, passing checks here. I'm ground right now, foot. I'm in my master's program. I'm telling you right now that 60% of Baltimore children cannot read or write in the third grade. They don't know
It's
what
more
a
like
card
80%.
is. They're, like this is I'm just talking about the statistical. Now I'm talking about me sitting in the classroom with sixth graders. We reading a second grade book. We struggle. It's taking us 40 minutes for something that should be that's 6 pages. Yeah. So I'm just being honest. I don't go to Howard. I don't go to HBCU. I don't go to Top Notch. Sorry. I'm in the thick of thieves, and I'm from a person from the thick of thieves, and I'm also at an age where I'm old enough, like he said, but I'm also young enough that they tell me, and I'm not seeing the people with the PhDs and I done been to Nigeria. They're not coming to the west side of Baltimore because the children are still in college and going home that night. I just not seeing it. You know,
So again, I can tell you that I believe there was a person at one point said that the fields are ready, that the harvest are few. The capacity, right? So there are, yes.
And
yeah, so.
Because I'm just saying, we got to be accountable somewhere. I got to be accountable. Even if it's my child, I got to be accountable. So I got to look that child in the face.
So we have to advocate. We have to, find our places, right? Some way or another, I know personally, right? I've purposely worked with my children, right? Because one of the things that I study in history, you see these brothers and out in the community, and their children or families are, good, right? So I personally advocate, right? But I also personally make sure that I work with some young boys, someplace, all right, so every Wednesday, I got ain't a lot, but I got some boys that, right, them kids, convincing them that this deficiency analysis that sometimes their parents use on them, that the narrative that they often get, right? We are still strangers in a strange land. We are still in a society that is afraid of the African, a society that is uncomfortable with a thinking, self-critiquing, critically examining person, let alone an African person, right? We are in a society that will advantage, pay for the dehumanization and distortion of an African consciousness, African image, authentic image, right? So all those things are real. All that thing is there. And in the midst of all of that, we get people who get turned on and see and got to do the work. The hope is that it might offer, right? It takes a match. Only takes a match to chase away the darkness. The moral arc of the universe may be long, but it is bent towards justice. Good will always win over evil. Just gotta shine that light, right? All that kind of stuff, right? But at the same time, we have to be, as you say, self-reflective and self-critical. Everybody can't be everything to everybody can be everything to everybody. But where you see a need, where you can be a solution, you be held accountable for that. Right? That is true. That is absolutely. Yes, sir.
I just want to add some context. So I know I went to the brothers in Baltimore. I went to, I think it was a conference. And when I sat in that conference, I was asking similar questions. And what I seen is brothers and sisters that were getting together and trying to restart this process and build capacity. That is, and we're reckoning with that. We realize that we have to bring this back online. And now it's almost like we're restarting again. And I think I was in the brothers session right here. I don't know his name, but he was saying we keep doing this again and again. And so it's kind of like, how do we build this in different generations so that it continues?
They have to pass it down, so they have to actually leave it.
Yeah.
Not be snitching and keep it.
That
Like, be like for themselves.
So I